This is the campaign diary for Crisis at Obsidian Point, an alien role-playing game cinematic one-shot scenario. Obsidian Point uses the Alien RPG game rule set that was released around Thanksgiving of 2019. This is a homebrew one-shot scenario designed in what is called cinematic play. It's designed for one time and to really simulate an alien movie. This campaign diary was played over 2 sessions, lasting about 6 total hours. Now, the overview for our scenario is that Obsidian Point is a Weyland-Yutani mining station, but Obsidian Point is intentionally misnamed. It is an off-the-books titanium mine. 800 miners work at Obsidian Point in 4 shifts during 100-day seasons. Overall, as far as Weyland-Yutani mines go, this one's a pretty good job. And our story began on day 13 of a season. My players were the Colonial Marshals and the Weyland-Yutani command team for this mining station. And as GM, or in this game mother in this case, I created 8 pre-generated characters for typical crew roles. There was a company man, sort of the Michael Scott of the crew. There was an investigator, a weapons specialist, effectively a bouncer or close combat specialist, a medic, a roughneck, your mechanical technician, a hacker who can work on the computers, and a pilot. My players produced the roleplay elements for each of their characters, such as names, appearances, etc. The first act of our 3-act scenario started as a routine day, and this was really to illustrate game mechanics, understanding how dice worked, and things of that nature. The company agent had to negotiate with a union shift representative, dealing with shares, things of that nature. The investigator had to deal with a minor drug dealer, somebody, peddling performance-enhancing drugs. The weapons specialist had to break up a fist fight in one of the habitats. Your close combat specialist had to break up another fight. The medic had to deal with the medical emergency. The roughneck had to repair a broken airlock. The computer technician had to repair a computer station. And the pilot had to fly a prospecting mission. Now, this took, for 8 characters, it took maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and it was really, again, just explaining the mechanics, pushing rolls, and things of that nature. Act 2 is where the tensions begin to ratchet up. Act 2 starts with a ship that dropped out of faster-than-light space into Obsidian Point system and on a collision course with the Obsidian Point station. This command team had 36 hours. They had to fly out in a shuttle, board this, now adrift ship, restore its power and regain control, and steer it off its collision course. The ship would have crashed into Obsidian Point and killed everyone on board. This creates our dynamic tensions within the scenario. The command team started off. They flew out there. They did a slow orbit to take in this adrift ship, getting an overview of its structure, things of that nature. Then the PCs docked with and boarded this derelict ship, carefully made their way, of course, to the bridge, and they successfully restored emergency power. It was completely powered down, but they managed to get it back online. While in the bridge, where they got the power going, they managed to access the mother computer system networks and gain some information. The ship's name was the Arcadia, but the Arcadia had no corporate registry whatsoever. This means the ship tends to be a smuggler's ship. If it's off all the books of all, it's working on the dark side of the galaxy. They did manage to access the crew manifest. Arcadia has 6 crew members. But with all their comtech efforts, some information just remained locked behind Mother's firewalls. Like, one of the things was full astronavigation. Where had this ship been? in previous navigations, and cargo manifest, what was in its cargo containers. The command crew did manage to get deep enough into the computers to find the Arcadia's last stop had been to a place called Tanaka 5. And they were managed to then begin to finally physically search the ship. So they started with the first cargo container. There was lockers and containers, but the command crew did not actually enter. There was a lot of paranoia about this ship. A lot of things didn't make sense. They were quite cautious. So there's windows in the locked doors. They looked in, looked around, but didn't physically enter. The second cargo container was where they entered a corporate office. This is where they actually found out that the last stop had been a place called Tanaka 5. Now, Tanaka 5 did set off some warnings with the police officer characters, and they were given private information that Tanaka 5 is a heavily regulated and monitored star system because it has some species on it which are wonderful for medical research but incredibly hostile to other life forms. The interesting thing in the player dynamic is they did not share that information with the rest of their team. The next place they stopped was the Arcadia's crew quarters. There were 6 bunks, but only 3 looked utilized. The Arcadia's, they did find a little bit of extra information in the crew quarters. One of the engineers, they found a personal data pad, had been doing a lot of calculations for taking a freighter like this into atmosphere, which is always a very risky effort. The third cargo container, they got some very large, what looked like jail cells and oversized cryonics chambers. But again, the command crew was cautious and they were sort of peeking through windows and stuff like that. The next place they came to on the ship was what is called the Arcadia's payload area. This is what the area on the ship that controls the cargo containers and whatever they contain. This is where they were finally able to access the computers and cameras in those cargo containers to really get some greater information. And what it revealed was that they were dealing with a number of these hostile organisms, the scorpionoids from Tanaka 5. They are very large, and they are much like a Earth scorpion. Armor-plated, big claws, poisonous stinger, the whole 9 yards. They had been illegally shipped off of Tanaka 5 onto this cargo container. What they found is that the scorpionoids had broken free of containment, made their way while everybody slept in cryostasis into the crew quarters and were feasting on them. The command crew from Obsidian Point did a smart thing. They basically, instead of going in there and trying to shoot them all, they ejected the cargo cryostasis module, sending a large number of them off into space where they would be rendered harmless. However, the command crew had one more place to go, the engineering deck on the Arcadia. There were 2 scorpionoids still there inside. And then there was the first combat of our game. Now, once the Scorpionoids were defeated, there was a really sort of dramatic cinematic moment. The command crew, being 8 individuals and 4 players, there was a big division. Basically, the command crew divided. You had one group who wanted to just kill the 2 remaining scorpionoids that remained in cryostasis. They saw them as very dangerous. They, somehow had gotten out of cryostasis. They killed large numbers of people while they slept. They said, we need to destroy the rest of them. There was a second group, really led by the company man who wanted to keep those 2 remaining Scorpionoids alive and intact. Now, keep them sleeping, but they wanted to return them to the Weyland-Yutani um, labs and things of that nature because they saw a profit margin in it. And it was a really great moment. You had one group effectively in a cargo container working to break, shut down, and destroy the cryostasis tubes that the Scorpionoids were in, where you had a second group on computers trying to hack in. In the end, the first group won out. They managed to seal themselves in, and they killed them by some means before the other group could stop them. Now, this did not get player versus player bad. They didn't come to blows. They didn't start shooting at one another, but it did make for great tension. And we could really see this playing out in a movie theater. Different parts of the party fighting with Mother to take control and do certain things with those freezers. It turned out as a really interesting debate. Act 3, the plot thickens, though. As the command crew, they've fought and had these battles. As they were returning to Obsidian Point, they noticed that the navigation and outside lights were no longer on as they approached. Upon docking with Obsidian Point, they were immediately called to the command center. And Obsidian Point's station chief administrator, Fletcher, summoned them to tell them everything that had transpired while they were gone. In game time, the command team had been away from the station for probably 18 hours. Fly out, fly back, take over the ship, things of that nature, have their internal squabbles. A saboteur from another corporation had smuggled several barrels on board Obsidian Point at the last resupply. The saboteur had lured 8 miners to secluded areas of the station where they were attacked by some spidery creatures. Several hours later, those miners awoke, convulsed, and something burst from their chests. And those small creatures had run off and into the engineering section. You could recognize much of this as the egg, face hugger, and chest burster moments of the alien universe that everybody knows and expects. That was bad. They were trying to find the small creatures, but 2 hours ago, Obsidian Point itself went dark and dead in space. The master power had been cut. So, the command crew's mission was to restore the nuclear reactor's containment field, get the power back online. Then they had to go and reactivate Obsidian Point's 6 secondary systems. Things like the oxygen levels, water reclamation, carbon dioxide scrubbing, and etc. To do this, they'd have to go down first to the reactor level. The engineering sections were 3 levels. The reactor was on the bottom level. So the command crew geared up, entered the engineering section, and made their way down to the reactor level. Now, everything was quiet until they reached the reactor control room door, and they were attacked by a full-grown xenomorph, the classic alien. Now, one thing that is important, the command crew are law enforcement officers. They are not decked out in full colonial marine garb. They effectively had only light armor, a tactical vest. All of them had sidearm pistols. They had 1 flame unit. They had 2 shotguns, and they had 1 of the classic M41, a pulse rifle. But the xenomorph, as they got to that door, ambushed one of the marshals, grabbed him, and drug him off and around a nearby corner. During this first round of combat, only a few team members took their actions and were able to get shots off at the xenomorphs. And one of the things that sort of they realized they were in trouble, this xenomorph's shell, its armored carapace, withstood a pulse rifle burst at point blank range. But the xenomorph gets to act more than once on a combat round. And when it got to take its turn, it killed the marshal it grabbed with a vicious bite. And with the worries about trying to not kill their own individual team member, the command crew did manage to kill the xenomorph in short order after the initial attack. What happened next is the command crew climbs the stairs from the reactor level towards engineering, but they get to the mid-deck level, and they, again, using their motion trackers, detected two moving objects. One in electronics and another in a storage area. They decided to go after the movement, I should say, in the storage area. They cracked the door, they went in, they swept around, but everything in the storage area was dark. The xenomorph dropped out of the rafters behind them, but they did manage to quickly kill the xenomorph. The firefight in the storage area did draw a second one in from the electronics shop, and it was killed in quick order. But in the fight in the hallway against the second xenomorph, the command team had its medic take a critical injury, a broken arm, in the ensuing combat. At this point, the command crew was able to take a quick break, attend to the medic's broken arm, get him healed up enough to go onto the third floor, getting those 6 major systems back online. The command crew was feeling pretty confident at this point, but one thing, they were all dealing with significantly high stress levels. The Alien role-playing game puts stress into play. One level of stress is almost nothing, but most of the team was carrying 3 or 4 levels of stress going into the finale. Again, the command team used their motion trackers well, and they detected multiple contacts on that final floor in the engineering level above the team. Their plan was to rush towards one of the doors, open it, get inside, and use that door as a choke point for killing the rest of the xenomorphs. Now, the door they opened had a xenomorph right inside it. But this was one moment that really sort of stood out. One member of the command crew, the lead guy, probably saved a lot of lives and altered the course of battle and mission, but he absolutely devastated the xenomorph that stood in their path. He was the one carrying a flamethrower, and he hit that xenomorph with an initial shot of 8 damage. On the dice, he was rolling, he rolled almost straight 6s, and it was just devastating. The xenomorph never got to act, so going around the flaming xenomorph body was a little bit of a hindrance, but for generally speaking, that really did shape the battle. The command team spotted and killed a second xenomorph that was charging them from further down the hallway, but so far the plan worked out fairly well. The command team knew that there were more aliens around, and 2 more converged on their location. Much of the command team was already in one of the environmental rooms, but there were a few stragglers, and one of the stragglers was the aforementioned wounded medic. 2 additional xenomorphs grabbed the medic and started an epic melee struggle. Now, it's important, grappling and beating off an alien is extremely difficult as far as game mechanics dice. And the odds were not in that medic's favor to survive like the first round. But I have to say, bad rolling on the Xenomorph's part, great rolling, excellent rolling on the medic's part. He did manage to break free. He dashed into that storage room as his teammates closed the door. So it was another very sort of powerful, brief moment in the game. Once in that area, the Xenomorphs were trying to beat on the metal door. The command team was able to reload weapons, regroup, and then they followed their plan. They partially opened the door, managed to finish off the last two Xenomorphs. Didn't take any damage in the process, but one sort of wrinkle is that pulse rifle was their biggest damage-causing item. They emptied the rifle's last reload, creating some new challenges. So the command crew then moved to search the rest of the level, going through the engineering level, getting systems back online. We just talked through and role-played this out. Eventually, they did gain access to camera systems. And what they found awaited them in one was an adolescent queen xenomorph. Now, this is homebrewed there's a lot of alternate versions of aliens in the books. I used one of those that wasn't quite full queen-sized. The team then attacked the adolescent queen en masse. What happened once they attacked the queen is they hit the adolescent queen hard with their weapons. They had a good first round. A lot of them won and had high initiative orders, but they had lost their pulse rifle. And when it was her turn to attack I will put it to you this way, in game mechanic terms, a xenomorph is powerful. Xenomorph royalty are over the top and are just devastating when they attack. And a big part of Xenomorph royalty is they roll early and often on the critical injuries table. In the first round of combat, the adolescent queen dropped two team members. One was speared with her tail. Another was eviscerated with claws and dropped in pretty short order. Another team member, the company man, was killed in round 2 when the adolescent queen charged, ran him over, and just did devastating internal injuries. But the command team did prevail enough. They did enough damage and managed to kill the adolescent queen. Now, one of the things that did happen, the team killed the adolescent queen in the nick of time. The medic, due to injuries, horrific situations, and the like, his morale broke. He effectively failed his panic rolls and went to run and hide. So in the end, the team of Brave Station members half of them died during the game. The close combat specialist was the one who was killed on the reactor level. The weapons specialist and roughneck were the two employees killed in the first round with the adolescent queen. The company agent is the one who got trampled by the adolescent queen in the second round of combat. The medic couldn't take it anymore. Too much injuries, too much death. They panicked, and they fled and hid after they failed it. The investigator, the computer technician, the pilot managed. They were the ones who, basically used pistols to finish off the adolescent queen, but they survived to live another day. Now, some conclusions. What we enjoyed about the Alien role-playing game system. This was a very easy system for players to learn. Character sheets are one page. There's only so many mechanics that go on. So really, I would say within 30 to 45 minutes, my players had a pretty good grasp of what their characters could do, how it worked. and which is good for a lot of role-playing games. The game does capture the alien universe and its paranoia. The players knew that corporations lack morality, especially in deep space. They knew that working for Weyland-Yutani was a risky proposition because there are other corporations who want to ruin what Weyland-Yutani has. And looking back, there were some really true cinematic moments. We can see some of these scenes playing out in a Alien movie. That conflict between the groups of PCs over the cryostasis scorpionoids, that life or death struggle of the medic, and that absolutely devastating flamethrower attack. You could totally see, a buff action hero hitting that xenomorph with a flamethrower at point blank range and defeating it. Now, we do believe, looking back now as the game mother, and there are some things I would probably want to try and work on or improve the next time I run an alien role-playing game scenario. First, I think, is that you need more xenomorph attack options or charts. Effectively, you only have really 6 things that xenomorphs can do. I might want to try and have a way where I roll some kind of dice to determine the type of an attack a xenomorph is going to engage in. For instance, is it trying to physically harm or hurt the character, or is it trying to abduct them? You may have a table for abductions, then a table for physical violence. Because xenomorphs, if you've watched the movies, sometimes they're trying to grab people to be cocooned. Sometimes they're trying to grab people to eat them. So there maybe just need more options. Kind of related to this is that xenomorphs, I think, need attacks that vary up the amount of damage they do. In our experience, xenomorphs versus humans, there was lots of rolls of no damage. People being grabbed, thrown down, drug, etc. On the other end of the spectrum, there were lots of instant kills. Lots of characters, getting stabbed by tails and dropping instantly, getting, those sorts of things. But there were very few sort of injuries, wounds. A lot of the middle stuff could get you into it. This is where you have characters having to make decisions about, do I fight the aliens? Do I help my downed comrades? I think more damage types with injuries, wounds, and partial damage would probably help give you a wider range of roleplay possibilities. Third was that we would have liked, I think, more panic effects, especially at lower stress level failures. The way the stress system is set up, there's basically 6 possibilities, starting at minor, moving to major. Now, we did get to one major where somebody just broke, cowered and ran. The trouble is, you're gonna have, in a normal scenario, lots of people getting those lower level panic effects, which is something like a nervous twitch. I think by the end of the scenario, half the characters who had survived, and I think 3/4 of the characters in total, had nervous twitches, which is the lowest of these panic effects. I think if you had more choices and more options, especially at those lower levels of stress failures, I think it would have made it more interesting. With that, this ends our campaign diary for the Crisis at Obsidian Point. And this is the Obsidian Point mining colony, a subsidiary of Weyland-Yutani Industries, signing off.